A thin veil of early morning mist hangs low over a dense European forest. Sunlight slips between the moss-covered trees as the sound of car engines hum in the distance. A convoy of black sedans winds its way up a narrow road, disappearing behind a wrought iron gate flanked by men in suits. Protesters gather on the roadside, holding signs that read, "Stop the Shadow Government" and "Transparency Now." Police keep them back as officials walk past to see a majestic manor hidden among the trees. Welcome to the Hotel de Bilderberg. Inside, chandeliers glow above polished marble floors. Men and women in tailored suits circulate in grand salons, exchanging handshakes and whispers. Some faces are familiar: former heads of state, CEOs, central bankers, and newspaper editors. Before long, a staff member collects smartphones and places them into sealed bags. In a conference room, a sign reads, "Chatham House Rule in effect." A sense of anticipation hangs in the air. The world's most powerful people are about to talk, and no one else is allowed to listen. To understand this meeting's mystique, we need to go back to the ruins of World War II. Europe was shattered, America ascendant, and old alliances were fragile. In 1954, Polish exile Józef Rettinger, worried about growing anti-American sentiment, proposed bringing leaders from Europe and North America together. His aim was simple: prevent another cataclysm by fostering cooperation. Rettinger enlisted Prince Bernhard of the Netherlands, former Belgian Prime Minister Paul van Zeeland, and business magnate Paul Rykens. With help from the US government, they gathered 50 delegates from 11 European countries and 11 Americans at a small hotel in the Dutch countryside. The hotel gave the conference its name, the Bilderberg Meeting. That first weekend was deliberately balanced. Each country sent one conservative and one liberal delegate. The topics were weighty: the threat of Soviet expansion, the future of NATO, rebuilding economies. But the structure was informal. No votes were taken. Participants spoke candidly, without worrying about headlines. The success of that inaugural conference led the organizers to form a steering committee and schedule annual meetings. A register of attendees and contact details was kept, so participants could build relationships outside the room. By creating a space where European and American elites could talk honestly, the founders hoped to cement the Atlantic Alliance and avoid war. 70 years later, the format remains much the same. Each spring or early summer, about 120 to 150 people receive discreet invitations to an undisclosed location. The guest list includes prime ministers, tech CEOs, royalty, defense officials, academics, and media executives. Attendees pay their own way. The host country foots the bill for security, and every session operates under the Chatham House Rule. You may use the information you hear, but you may not attribute it to a person. Themes range from artificial intelligence to geopolitical flashpoints, from energy markets to social change. The goal, according to organizers, is to promote understanding and consensus around big issues. There are no keynote speeches, no press briefings, no live streams. Reporters are not allowed in. Mobile phones and recording devices are banned. Afterward, a bland list of topics and the names of attendees are released to the public. The secrecy is intentional. Former steering committee member Etienne Davignon has said that the draw for participants is the ability to speak freely without fear of misquotation. Dennis Healy, one of the founding members, later said that although they hoped to build a more unified world, the accusation that they were planning a single world government was exaggerated. Not wholly unfair, he admitted, but exaggerated. Whatever the intent, the effect is the same. No one outside the room knows what is said inside. Criticism and suspicion have followed the Bilderberg Group from the beginning. To some on the right, it is a cabal plotting to dissolve national sovereignty and impose a global government. To some on the left, it is a boardroom coordinating capitalism and crushing workers. The secrecy of the proceedings offers fertile soil for both views. In 2005, Davignon brushed aside the accusations with a dark joke, treating the controversy as something almost absurd rather than something that required a formal defense. If the group were a secret world government, he said, we should be bloody ashamed of ourselves for the state of the world. The group itself insists that it simply provides space for frank discussion. There are no votes, no policies, no binding agreements. Despite official denials, rumors persist. In the 1980s, journalists claimed that an impassioned plea at Bilderberg convinced European leaders to sanction Argentina during the Falklands War. It is said that Helmut Kohl predicted German reunification at a meeting when such talk was taboo. More recent dinners, like the one promoting Herman Van Rompuy for EU president, are offered as evidence of king-making. Meanwhile, the guest list has often included names that, at the time, seemed promising, but not yet dominant. Bill Clinton attended in 1991, just before his rise to the presidency. Tony Blair appeared years before taking office in Britain. Emmanuel Macron was invited before launching his successful bid for the French presidency. On the corporate side, figures like Mark Zuckerberg and Eric Schmidt have also appeared on attendee lists, alongside central bankers, intelligence officials, and media executives. To some, that pattern feels less like coincidence and more like choreography, a quiet vetting ground where future leaders are introduced to the architects of global finance, policy, and information. To others, it's simply a private forum where influential people exchange ideas off the record. Either way, the perception lingers. Protests greet each gathering. Conspiracy theories flourish online. The truth of what happens inside remains, by design, unknowable. For believers, the combination of secrecy, power, and anecdotal influence is enough. They see the Bilderberg Group as the nerve center of a hidden agenda. The following claims capture the core of their argument. Believers argue that the Bilderberg Group is drafting the blueprint for a one-world government. They point to the caliber of attendees, royalty, presidents, prime ministers, EU commissioners, central bankers, oil giants, and tech titans, and see a proto-parliament of the planet. Founding member Dennis Healy's remark that he hoped for greater global unity is taken as a confession. In their telling, what began as an Atlanticist dialogue has evolved into a mechanism for dissolving borders. The very act of gathering the West's decision-makers under one roof, they say, is the first step toward merging them into a single governing body. To support the one-world government theory, conspiracists highlight policies and events that seemingly track with Bilderberg discussions. They argue that the formation of the European Union, the introduction of the euro, and successive global trade agreements were incubated at these meetings before being rolled out in public. A frequently cited anecdote is the 2009 dinner in Brussels hosted by the steering committee ahead of the EU's selection of its first president. Herman Van Rompuy, then Belgium's prime minister, attended the dinner. Days later, he was named to the new post. For believers, the timing is no coincidence, but evidence of a quiet appointment process. They also note the presence of figures from NATO, the IMF, and the World Bank, and suggest these institutions are building blocks of a future supranational authority. Finally, the Chatham House Rule itself becomes a piece of evidence. Believers do not see confidentiality as a facilitator of candor, but as a veil. Without agendas or transcripts, there is no way to verify the topics discussed or to hold anyone accountable. The very secrecy that organizers defend as necessary to encourage openness is, to those committed to the one-world government narrative, proof that plotting is taking place behind closed doors. When combined with a pattern of global integration, this lack of transparency convinces adherents that Bilderberg is drafting a blueprint for world governance and issuing instructions disguised as consensus. Another widespread claim holds that the Bilderberg Meeting acts as a recruitment center for future leaders and policies. Those invited, believers say, are not random. They are up-and-comers deemed pliable or promising. They point to Bill Clinton's reported attendance in 1991 before his ascent to the U.S. presidency, Tony Blair's participation in 1993 before he became UK Prime Minister 4 years later, and Emmanuel Macron's presence in 2014 while still a junior minister before becoming France's president in 2017. A Bilderberg invitation in this narrative is a precursor to high office and a test of loyalty. Believers further claim that policy shifts are coordinated at these meetings. They assert that sanctions against Argentina during the Falklands War were decided at a Bilderberg session where a British minister persuaded hesitant allies. They recall stories that Helmut Kohl floated the idea of German reunification at a meeting long before it was politically fashionable, and that discussions behind closed doors paved the way for the euro. Even anecdotal reports of Herman van Rompuy's dinner, described in the One World Government claim, are repeated to suggest that top jobs and policies are sewn up away from the public eye. These stories, though often unverified, accumulate into a narrative of kingmakers and policy engineers operating beyond democratic scrutiny. For believers, the coincidences are too numerous to ignore. When a politician who attended suddenly champions a controversial policy or climbs rapidly, it is seen as evidence that marching orders were given. The secrecy of the meetings and the absence of media scrutiny reinforce the notion of a hidden agenda. The handful of journalists who attend as participants are bound by the same confidentiality, stoking suspicions that the press is complicit. To conspiracy theorists, the Bilderberg Group is not just a forum, but a finishing school and dispatch center for the next generation of leaders and policies. The third claim focuses on the corporate and media presence at Bilderberg. Roughly 1/3 of participants are drawn from industry and finance. CEOs of multinational banks, heads of energy conglomerates, and chairs of tech giants sit in closed rooms with policymakers. To conspiracy theorists, this confluence of public power and private capital indicates that corporate interests are dictating policy behind the scenes. Free market advocates, they argue, use the meetings to synchronize deregulation, austerity measures, and trade deals that benefit the wealthy. Left-wing critics see a neoliberal agenda. Right-wing critics see a betrayal of national sovereignty. Both fear a collusion that undermines democratic accountability. Believers also point to the presence of media executives. The presidents of CNN, The Economist, and other major outlets have been on the guest list. Conspiracists claim that this ensures favorable coverage or complete silence. They note that mainstream media rarely reports on Bilderberg beyond perfunctory coverage of guest lists, reinforcing the suspicion that editors and executives have been brought inside the circle. When the BBC described the group as an occasional supper club, conspiracy theorists bristled. To them, the combination of corporate power and media complicity signals a cartel controlling information and shaping public perception. In this interpretation, Bilderberg is not merely a discussion forum, but a boardroom where news narratives are decided, crises are managed, and dissent is contained. The alignment of industry leaders and the press in closed sessions is presented as evidence that a small group orchestrates both economic policy and public opinion. It feeds into broader fears of concentrated media ownership and corporate lobbying, providing a tidy explanation for why certain stories gain traction and others disappear. To believers, these claims form a coherent story. A cabal of the powerful meets in secret to direct world events. Secrecy is not a tool but a shield. Every ambiguous anecdote becomes a clue. Whether it is global governance, king-making, or corporate collusion, the narrative is enticing because it offers a simple explanation for complex problems. Those who have attended Bilderberg meetings and many scholars reject the conspiracy narrative. They argue that the group's importance is overstated and its influence misunderstood. The Bilderberg Group maintains that its purpose is to foster dialogue, not to pass resolutions. Meetings follow the Chatham House Rule to allow participants to speak freely without fear of being quoted in headlines. The organizers emphasize that attendees come from varied backgrounds and that disagreement is not only tolerated but encouraged. Dennis Healy himself admitted that he and his colleagues hoped for a more cooperative world, but he dismissed accusations that they sought to create a one-world government. From this perspective, the room is more like a seminar than a senate. Supporters of this view note that the group's press releases stress that it has no institutional aims and exists solely as a forum. Invitations rotate, and the mix of politicians, academics, labor representatives, military officers, and non-governmental advocates changes yearly. Attendees do not check their national loyalties at the door. They bring their own agendas and often disagree. The breadth of perspectives makes a monolithic conspiracy improbable. Furthermore, the group cannot enforce any decision. There is no charter, no budget, and no staff to implement policies. Without a mechanism for enforcement, plotting a global regime would be difficult. Critics of the conspiracy theory also argue that there are more efficient venues for secret governance if that were the goal. Multilateral organizations like the G7, WTO, and UN Security Council already have established structures and legal authority. Private forums like Davos provide more media exposure for ideas. If Bilderberg were truly running the world, they suggest, the results would be more coherent. The messy, competitive reality of global politics undermines the idea that a single 3-day meeting directs the course of nations. The stories of king-making evaporate under scrutiny. It is true that many future leaders attended Bilderberg before rising to office, but correlation does not prove causation. Rising stars are often included because they are already on the trajectory to power, not because Bilderberg makes them so. In many cases, invitations follow a politician's meteoric ascent rather than precede it. Skeptics point out that the conference has been wrong as often as it has been right. For every attendee who later becomes prime minister or president, there are many more who never do. Claims that specific policies were decided at meetings rely on second-hand anecdotes and misunderstand the policy process. Even the widely cited 2009 dinner was just that, a dinner. The European Council still had to decide on Herman Van Rompuy's appointment through formal channels. Sanctions against Argentina were decided in the British Cabinet and United Nations, not in a hotel dining room. German reunification was driven by mass movements and geopolitical shifts rather than whispers in a conference. As for the euro, the European Economic Community spent decades negotiating monetary union openly and publicly. Without leaked agendas, minutes, or whistleblowers, the claim that directives are issued behind closed doors remains speculative. Skeptics further note that Bilderberg functions more like a job fair and networking event than an election committee. It provides a chance to meet mentors and potential collaborators, but cannot ordain careers. Politicians must still win elections. Policies must still survive legislatures and courts. The presence of decision-makers does not automatically translate into preordained outcomes. Anecdotes can be compelling, but when examined in context, they often lose their conspiratorial weight. Opponents of the corporate collusion theory note that the participant list is broad. Alongside CEOs and bankers sit union leaders, civil servants, researchers, military officers, social activists, and journalists. The mix changes yearly, and there is no permanent membership or formal vote. Discussions last 2 or 3 days a year. Business leaders have no authority to compel politicians, and politicians cannot force CEOs to act. Many attendees publicly criticize one another's policies after leaving the conference. In this view, the balance of voices makes corporate domination unlikely. Skeptics also emphasize the practical limits of the meetings. Even if some attendees wish to set global agendas, there is no mechanism within Bilderberg to implement decisions. The meetings have no staff, budget, or enforcement arm. Attendees return to their countries and companies where domestic politics, shareholders, and public opinion constrain them. Policies are shaped by parliaments, courts, cabinets, and voters. Furthermore, the confidentiality rule cuts both ways. It prevents participants from attributing ideas, but it also prevents them from making public commitments. Without accountability, any supposed deal would be hard to enforce. Finally, critics argue that there are more plausible explanations for media behavior than collusion. Editors may not cover the meeting extensively because it yields few on-the-record quotes, or because they deem it less newsworthy than other stories. The presence of media executives at Bilderberg may be more about listening and networking than issuing editorial directives. David Aronovich's dismissal of the group as an occasional supper club underscores this view. If conspirators intended to control narratives, skeptics say, they would choose venues with clear channels for influence rather than a secluded hotel for a few days. Ultimately, the counterpoint suggests that Bilderberg's power is more imagined than real. It is influential because the attendees are influential, but its impact comes from networking and exposure, not secret decrees. What many see as secrecy may simply be a shield, a way to let powerful people speak openly without every word being turned into a headline. For decades, the Bilderberg Group has gathered behind closed doors, a magnet for intrigue. On one hand, it is an undeniable nexus of power. On the other, the world remains messy and unpredictable. Participants insist that the meetings are nothing more than conversations among equals. Critics counter that secrecy at this scale cannot be innocent. Believers point to anecdotal coincidences and ideological alignment, while skeptics emphasize the lack of hard evidence and the diversity of views inside. Our journey through the history, allegations, counterarguments, and theories shows a phenomenon shaped as much by our fears as by the facts. Does Bilderberg hide a master plan for a global government? Or is it a symposium where leaders candidly discuss challenges? Is it an elite networking event, a structural feature of global capitalism, or a convenient scapegoat? Perhaps it is all of these and none of them. As long as powerful people meet in private, questions will persist. The truth may lie not in the corridors of a hotel, but in how societies manage transparency, accountability, and trust. Only time, and perhaps greater openness, will tell. Thank you for watching this episode of Index Unknown. If you enjoyed exploring the mysteries of the Bilderberg Group, please like this video and subscribe to our channel. Share your thoughts and theories, and don't forget to click the notification bell so you never miss an episode. All of this helps the channel grow, and it means I can keep bringing you theories that change the way we see history and reality itself.